Hello all and welcome to my channel DevOps Mela. This is Rohit Singh. In this video tutorial, we'll be talking about few Azure DevOps interview questions. So basically, let me give you a disclaimer first, guys. This will not be a straightforward interview question wherein I'll be talking about what is DevOps, what is Azure DevOps. Frankly, not that simple. Okay. So based on my experience, I take multiple interviews plus for my testing and for my experience, I even give interviews. So what I have felt that in the company, they are not asking straightforward questions like what is DevOps, what is Agile, what is Scrum, and those things. They give you scenarios like how do you build and how do you release, and there are multiple scenarios based questions what they ask. So that is what my focus is. So my focus is to help you guys with few interview questions which will be scenario based. Even if I'm asking a simple question, for example, if I'm talking about git stash, that would be based on a scenario, so you need to think what exactly the answer could be. So that is what I'm trying to do over here. So this particular tutorial is only based on Azure DevOps interview questions, wherein I'll be throwing multiple scenarios first, then I'll be providing solutions as well. Okay, but before jumping to the solution, make sure think about the question, think about the scenario, think whether you can solve it or not. Okay, so let's start with the first scenario. Okay, let's start with the first scenario. So let's understand what exactly the question is. So we have 50 commits in develop branch, and out of which only 5 commits needs to be pushed in release branch. And from release branch, the changes will be pushed into production. Okay. So the question is, we have around 50 odd commits in develop branch. So develop branch is mostly used for development activities. So in that we have multiple commits. And release branch is used to release your changes into your upper environments like your stage, production. Okay, so out of 50, only 5 commits needs to be pushed into the release branch. So let's think about it, like what is the best way to achieve it. So the best way to achieve it is through git cherry picking. So what exactly is the cherry picking? So cherry picking is a concept of picking a commit from a branch and applying it to another. So think about it, like if you have a box of cherry in which you want to pick 5 best cherry out of it. So you start picking the best cherries. Okay. And if you want to run this, if you want to do a cherry picking using a git console, the command is given git cherry -pick and the commit ID. So this way, through git command line, you can initiate cherry picking. But over here we are looking into Azure DevOps, like how exactly in Azure DevOps we can do it. So let's go back to Azure DevOps and see what best we can do over there. Okay, I am into Azure DevOps. I have a repository called e-commerce website, and I have multiple branches over here. So in this, if I go inside develop, okay, there are multiple changes and multiple commits inside my develop branch. Now think about it, this particular commit is not there in my release. Now I want to just pick out of all these commit, I just want to pick this. If I create a pull request, for example, you guys might have a question, why can't we just create a pull request? If I create a pull request, everything, whatever changes are not there in my release, everything will get pulled into my release, and that is not my requirement. My requirement is we just need to pick specific commits. So let's take an example. This is the commit which I want to pick. So I just go inside this, there is an option cherry picking. If you click over here, you select the branch you want to put it in release. It creates a temporary branch based out of the commit ID, and it will create a pull request form from where you can post that you can put this information, this particular commit into release. Okay, all this thing, whatever the demo which I have given to you right now, I already have a video, so you can find that video in my description box. I'll be having those video links in my description box if you want to have a detailed explanation how exactly things are done. So answering to the previous question, the scenario question, Git cherry picking is the concept which you can use it. Okay, that was scenario 1. Let's go back to scenario 2 and let's see what we have. Okay, this scenario is talking about we have a developer called Ram has developed an application module. While developing, he has made around 100 commits locally. Now he needs to push all his changes in remote develop branch as a single commit. So basically we don't want developer messy history in my develop branch, but we do want all his changes. Okay, so let me reiterate the scenario again. So there is a developer Ram who has developed a module. While developing, he has done multiple commits on his local branch. Okay, now he wants to push all his changes into develop branch, but he does not want his history to be pushed because the history is very messy. If I put all these 100 commits in my develop branch, my develop branch history will be very messy. So we don't want that messy history, but we do want all his changes. So the answer to this question is git squash. Git squash is a technique that helps you to take a series of commits and condense it to a few commits. In my case, I want to condense it to one single commit. Out of those 100 commits will be converted into one single commit using git squash. Okay, squashing is a technique. If you want to use it on your git command line, the command is given git rebase -i stands for interactive head ~3. That means it will take the last 3 commits if you want to try it on your git command line. Okay, but our focus is again how do we do it on Azure DevOps. Let's go back on Azure portal. Okay, let me cancel this. Okay, think about it. This is the temporary branch, the local branch which my developer was working. This was the branch user story 1 2 3 4. Okay, now this branch has multiple commits inside it. Okay, all this commit needs to be all these changes needs to be pushed inside develop branch. But while I'm pushing those changes, I don't want all this history. I want a single history, a single commit. Okay, how exactly we can achieve it? This can be achieved using git squash as I mentioned. For doing that, I can just simply go ahead and create a pull request. I create a new pull request from user story 1 2 3 4 into develop. I just name it as test commit squash. Description I just ignore. I just remove this user story which is linked. No merge conflict. These are the files, these are the commits which I'm pushing into my develop. So the important part over here, when I click on complete, the merge type which I would be using would be squash. So I'll be squashing all those commit into one single commit. Okay, now I just uncheck these options. So I'll just click on complete merge. Merging pull request, I think this might be done till now. Let's go back in my develop. See this, guys. I have one single test commit squash and I have all the information over here. This is how squashing works in Azure DevOps. Okay, you might have seen there is no files inside this commit, but don't worry, all those changes were already present in my develop. That is the reason you can't see any files. Okay, but if you want, create a new branch, create a new repository, make several changes to your local repository, local branch, push it into a remote, then create a pull request. You'll see everything is coming as one single commit, the way it is looking over here. and all your changes will be there inside. Okay, any doubt, please ping me. I'm happy to help you guys. Okay, let's go back to the third scenario. Let's go back to my PPT. Okay, what is the next scenario? Okay, the scenario is, again, a developer Ram has few uncommit changes in his local branch, and now he has to empty his current working directory to accommodate emergency change like ECR or bug fix. How can Ram handle such scenario without losing his uncommit changes? Okay, let me reiterate the scenario over here. A developer Ram is working on some module, and his managers comes in and says, Ram, there is an emergency change. Whatever you're doing, just drop it and get back to the emergency change. Okay, definitely Ram cannot drop all his uncommit changes. He has been working on those changes for last 1 month. So how exactly Ram can handle such scenario? Let's see that. Okay, so Ram can handle such scenario using git stash. Okay, stashing is a concept where it's a command which can take your uncommit changes, both stage and unstage, saves them away from later use. Okay, so git stash will take your uncommit changes and it will save it somewhere in git, and it will make sure your working directory is clean and you can start working on your working directory, in your work directory. And later, whenever you're done with your ECR, whenever you're done with your bug fix, you can go back and you can use it. Okay, how exactly this git stash feature is not available on Azure DevOps, so we'll see this on git console, not console, git command line locally. So let's go back on my local system. So this is the repository what I have right now. Let me open a git bash over here. Okay, if I just run a git status command, let me see if I have any uncommit changes right now. Yes, I do have 2 uncommit changes right now, which is not even staged. It is an unstaged right now. These are the, so git status is another command to have to check the stage and unstaged files. So that is for later. Okay, how do I run the git stash? Simply just giving git stash command will stash all my changes and it will make my working directory cleaner. So I ran the command git stash. Now if I just go and run the command git status, I will not find anything in my working directory right now. So where exactly my changes are? Okay, if I go and run the command git stash list, this is the place where I can see my stash changes. Now I assume I'm done with my ECR changes, I'm done with my bug fix, I'm going back to my uncommit changes. How do we do that? So we can go in, we can run the command git stash again, and I can run the command with the option pop. Okay, if you have multiple stash, you can even declare your stash name this way. Even this works. Or if you just do this, it will take the latest stash for you. Now if you see this, we are back. Now if you run the command git status again, you should see those 2 uncommit changes. Okay, this is how stash works. So this is what stashing is all about. Okay, now there are other commands: git stash, git list, git pop, git drop. One thing, when you're using git stash drop, it will delete your uncommit files also. So use this command very wisely. Okay, let's see the scenario 4. In this scenario, there is a developer Ram has packaged and pushed his project module in Azure Artifacts. Okay, and now developer Lakshman, who is working on some other module, has a direct dependency on Ram's module. How can Lakshman project consume packages from Azure Artifacts locally to successfully build his project. So in short, there is a developer who has created a module. He has pushed his module into Azure Artifacts. Now Lakshman, there's other developer who wish to consume Ram's module because there's a direct dependency on his project. How can Lakshman consume his packages locally? So the word locally. Okay. So consider this as a .NET application in my example. So how can we do this? So this can be achieved. So let's go and see what exactly the module is first. Let's go back to my project Azure DevOps, and inside this there is a feed called web app underscore feed. Inside this I have a package. Shiva underscore web app is a package what we have already. Okay, so what Lakshman has to do first, so Lakshman has to see whether he is able to access that particular feed or not. So as we saw already, so consider me as Lakshman. I am able to access this particular feed from my console, so I have access to it. Okay, from my Azure DevOps console I am able to access this. So that first part is done. Okay, so we are checking developer has required permission to access the private feed. Yes, I have. So the second is being a developer, I have a web application. So I have a test application over here. Just for this video tutorial, I have a test application. Inside this dependency, I don't have anything right now. So what the other part is, we need to go ahead and add Azure Artifacts feed source URL in Visual Studio manage package solution. How exactly we can do it? Firstly, let's go back to the console. Okay, connect to feed, there's an option. I'm using Visual Studio. Okay, so I'll click on connect to feed and I will select Visual Studio. As I said, it's a .NET application which I'm using for reference. Okay, if you come down, this is the name of my feed. This is the source. I'll just copy this source. I'll go back to Visual Studio and I'll go in tools. In NuGet package manager, I'll go back to manage NuGet package solution. Over here, if you see, the source is right now the nuget.org. That is the source which we can see right now. Now I'll go and add my own private source. I'll click on this gear icon. I'll click on add. I'll put the source name and I'll give the feed name as well. That is web app feed. Okay. I'll click on OK. Now if you see in the drop down, I have web app feed as well. Now if I just go inside this feed, I will look for the package which I'm looking for my application. So guys, all this, how do we create a feed, how do we package a feed and things like that, everything is covered in my Azure Artifacts video. You can find the link in my description box. So from here, it is loading. From here I can go ahead and select the package which I want. So here we go. If I scroll down, what is the name of the package? Let me refresh. The name of the package which you're looking for is Shiva web app underscore web app. Let me put it over here, Shiva underscore web app. See, here we go. I can go ahead and select this for my project and I can go ahead and install it. This is one way, and as soon as I install, this will start reflecting over here in my dependency tab. Okay, in my dependency drop down. This is one way. The other way also is going to NuGet package manager, open the package manager console and just run this command. If you go inside it, there is a PowerShell command. You just run it. Copy this and put it over here, and things will get installed. The package will get installed and you can build your application and you can push your application back to your repository. That is how we can achieve this. Okay, let's move back to the other scenario. Let's scenario 5. Let's see what exactly we have. Okay, all. So in scenario 5, let's see what exactly the scenario is. So again, we have a developer called Ram. He has created a .NET application, core application. Now he wishes to automate the entire build and release process through Azure DevOps. Guide the developer with the entire end-to-end process and deploy the application on Azure Web App using IAC, that's infrastructure as a code methodology. So guys, we have multiple questions in this, and this is the entire scenario which we are talking about. The first question is, there is a developer called Ram, very much new to DevOps. So he reaches out to a DevOps engineer and he asks us, how do we automate the entire build and release process? Okay, that is one scenario. The other scenario is we need to deploy this on Azure Web App, and we need to use infrastructure as a code methodology. Okay, so over here you can use ARM templates or you can use Terraform, whichever you are comfortable with. So let's guide the developer what exactly needs to be done. Okay, so the first step, ask the developer how he builds the application locally, whether he is using MS Build, VS Build. So frankly, if it's a .NET, he might be using Visual Studio, and he might be using the Visual Studio build process. Okay, build and release process, publish process. So ask the developer what are the steps, is the application is working locally and things like that. So whatever information you can ask, just ask the developer about that. The next is create Azure repos. Okay, on Azure repos, create a repository and push the source code in remote repository along with IAC configuration file. In IAC is nothing but it's a ARM template files, a JSON file, or if you're using Terraform, then we would need a .tf configuration file along with the source code, because we need to even create Azure Web App, okay, using IAC methodology. Post that. So once the repository is created, once the source file and everything is pushed inside the repository, go ahead and create a build pipeline. So as we all know, in Azure DevOps, there are two ways of creating build pipelines: a classic and a YAML based. A classic is more wherein you have multiple. It's a GUI based wherein you have multiple tasks you can add and remove directly. YAML based is again, it follows pipeline as a code method. So a YAML Azure -pipeline.yaml file gets created, which becomes part of your repository. So in this, nothing is mentioned whether to use classic or YAML. Nothing is mentioned. So we'll stick with YAML. That is something I'll suggest. Okay. So the first thing first will be building the solution post the YAML file is created. There are multiple tasks inside the YAML file. The first task is we'll build the solution using MS Build or a VS Build. So it's a .NET application. This is something we would be using. Post the build is completed, we'll run code analytics. So if you're doing a static code, we can do a static code analytics through sonarqube. We can even use Veracode. Depends what third-party application your company is using to do code analytics. Okay. Then if needed, we'll have a code coverage as well. So after code analytics, we'll do code coverage. Code coverage will basically check the percentage of code testing done for your application. Okay. Then the next task would be, we'll copy the ARM or a Terraform configuration files. So if it's a ARM template, then we'll copy the JSON file, and if it's Terraform, we'll copy the .tf file. So we'll have a copy task as well in my build pipeline, and later we'll publish the artifact. So in Azure, you can publish the artifact, the output file, either into a file share server if you don't want to put it on cloud, or you can put it on Azure pipeline drop location. So that's a container wherein you can put it, and from where my release pipeline can access. Okay. So that is about build. So building the solution, running code analytics, running code coverage, copying configuration files, and publishing an artifact. Okay. The next part is releasing. So next part is deploy. So using ARM templates, we'll create Azure Web App. Okay. So we'll have two tasks In my release pipeline, I'll have a ARM template task. Over here, I'm using classic. Okay, and the next task, once the web app is created, we'll have a deployment task wherein we'll be deploying our ASP.NET application. How exactly this entire flow happens, I have covered this in my tutorial video. Check my video in my description. Okay, for now, let me give you a FYI how exactly it looks. Let's go back to one of my project. Okay, let's go back to this project itself. If you go inside, there is a project call, and if you see, this is the YAML file. If you see, I'm restoring it from my private feed. That's ignore it for now. So this is where my build is happening. This is where I'm copying my ARM files. See, I'm copying all my JSON file, and I'm putting everything inside my in a drop location, in a location known as Shiva-web app. That's a container on cloud. I don't have testing inside it, but if I do have testing, that particular task will come over here. So I don't have testing over here. Now if I just go back to releases for this, so this is the release. So in this release, I have two tasks. I have a ARM task which will be creating an Azure web app for me, and the next is a deployment task wherein I'm deploying the output file. So this is how this is done. This is how you can achieve this scenario. Okay. Okay, well, let's see the next scenario. Okay, so over here we have a developer called Lakshman has developed a microservice application, a .NET Core. He wishes to automate the entire end-to-end process to deploy the application on Azure Kubernetes services. Make sure to use PAC, that's pipeline as a code, methodology for entire build and release. So this is very similar, not similar I would say. So this is very similar with my previous scenario which we saw, wherein I was building a .NET application. The only difference over here is now we are deploying this .NET application on Azure Kubernetes services. So there are few prerequisites. So we have to deploy this on Azure Kubernetes services. Then we may have to create Azure Kubernetes clusters beforehand, and we even require ACR, that's Azure Container Registry. Okay, it could be ACR, you can put it in Docker Hub as well, but let's like we are talking about Azure DevOps, so I'm sticking with all Azure cloud services for now. Okay, and we need to create service connections as well to connect to Azure cloud services. Okay, so this service connection was needed even for my previous scenario which we just covered. Okay, so just an FYI. So these are the prerequisites. So all this thing needs to be created beforehand, before even we tell Lakshman how things are done. Okay, now what are the scenario, what are the build scenario and things scenario. So again, we need to create Azure repos, and we need to push the source code in a remote repository. But as we are deploying my changes in Azure Kubernetes now, there are multiple more things what is needed. I would need a Docker file. So why do we need a Docker file? To create a Docker image. Okay, and post that I would even need a deployment.yaml file and service.yaml file to deploy my application, and service.yaml file to access my application from outside world. So these are the files needed, these are the configuration file needed, and we need to create a build and release pipeline using YAML now this time. So it is clearly mentioned, use pipeline as a code method for entire process. So we'll have multiple stages. We'll have a build stage, then we'll have deploy stage. So how exactly that is done, we'll see it. Okay, the first thing first, we'll start with the build. Okay, let me show you the build first, how exactly. I have a project. Okay, deploy to AKA. This is again a .NET project. It's a simple web app. It just displays my DevOps mail app page. I have this entire video tutorial on my channel. Please go and check how exactly things are done. Plus, you can find the link in my description. Okay. So come back to the Docker file. If you see this Docker file, these are the Docker file. It is simply creating, building the Docker image. Okay. Then post that once the Docker image is built, this image is pushed into an ACR. That's Azure Container Registry. Okay. Prior that, if you want to add code analytics, code coverage, everything you can do it. Okay. Once that is done, what is the next part? Once that is done, once the solution is built, once the image is created, to be very specific, the image is pushed into ACR. That's a container registry on Azure Cloud. Now later publish the manifest files, again either on file share or Azure pipeline drop location. So manifest file is the deployment.yaml file which is needed for deploying my application, and service.yaml file. This is about the build. Okay, let's go and see the YAML file as well, because we are talking about that YAML. Let's see the build stage first. So this, okay guys, so this is the YAML file, Azure pipelines.yaml. This is, I have my variables defined, my ACR and everything defined. This is my build step, wherein I'm running the Docker file. Using the Docker file, I'm building the application, I'm creating the image, then the image is pushed into a ACR. That's a container registry. The next step, I'm uploading the manifest file, the YAML files, which I was just talking about. Then the next stage is deploy. Let's go back to the PPT. So in deploy, firstly, the image would be pulled from ACR. So whatever image we have pushed into ACR, in the deployment step, we'll be pulling that image from the ACR. Post that, through manifest file, the deployment will be triggered in AKS cluster, and depending the pods will be created in AKS cluster. So let's go back to YAML. So that is the next stage, wherein the ACI image is getting pulled, and through this deployment.yaml and service.yaml file, the application is getting deployed. Okay, so this is the entire end-to-end process of deploying a microservice application on Azure Kubernetes services. Okay, so that's it. This is the only 6 scenarios which I have for today. Let me know if you like this tutorial video, and let me know if you want a part 2, or if you want more interview questions on Azure DevOps or on Terraforms or Kubernetes, whichever services you want. Do let me know how did you like my content, and please put your suggestion, your comments in my comment box. Okay, you can even visit my website devopsmela.in, or you guys can even write your suggestion on devopsmela@gmail.com. Okay, that's it for today. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Hello all, and welcome to my channel DevOps Mela. This is Rohit Singh, and in this video tutorial we'll talk about Azure DevOps scenario based interview question, and this is the part 2. So all thanks to you all by putting your thoughts and in the comment box and asking me to create this part 2. This is for you guys. So based on all the comments, all the feedbacks and the emails which I've received from you guys, that motivated me for creating this part 2. So if you guys are new to this channel, and if you're viewing this video for the very first time, please check the part 1 as well, because I have covered around 5-6 questions, scenario based interview questions over there as well. So again, I want to reiterate, this is not a straightforward interview question wherein I'm talking about what is DevOps, what is Agile. Over here, even the easiest question I'll be giving into a scenario, I'll be wrapping into a scenario and I'll be asking that questions. And post that, I'll be even demonstrating how exactly we can do it, we can achieve that part. Okay, so let's start without wasting much time. Let's start and let's move on to the second part of interview round. Okay, the first question. So it's written scenario 7 because I've covered 6 scenarios in my previous tutorial video, and you can find the link inside the description box. Okay. So the question is, we got multiple projects folder inside one repository XYZ. So the repository name is XYZ, and we got multiple folders. So inside one repository, I have multiple projects. Okay, and we have build pipelines created for each project. So each project has own separate build pipelines. So hence only that particular project build should be triggered automatically in which the changes were committed. So take an example, I have multiple folders. So just let's go back to Azure DevOps and let's understand this question first. So this is my DevOps. Let's go to the repository. So consider this is the repository, Shiva underscore web app. This is one of my students' repository. Inside this, I have multiple folders. So consider this is one project, this is other project. And I have pipelines created, build pipelines created for both. I have build pipelines for this particular project. I have build pipelines created for this particular project. So what exactly the issue is over here? Whenever the developer is making changes onto this particular branch, to the develop branch, both pipelines are getting triggered automatically. So how do we segregate this? So what exactly I want to achieve over here? When I make changes to this particular folder, only this particular pipeline should trigger. Same vice versa. If I'm making changes to this particular folder, only this particular pipeline should get triggered. How exactly we can achieve this? Let's go back to the PPT. So this can be achieved using path filtration. So I have got many query on this question. I've got multiple emails from you guys. So that is the reason I thought of including this into my scenario based interview questions. So there are two ways of achieving it. The one way is override trigger setting and specify the exact path for the build pipeline. One way. Let's go back and see that first. So let's go back to pipelines. In pipelines, consider this is the build pipeline which I'm talking about. So we'll go inside this pipeline. Let's do the edit. It's a YAML based pipeline which I'm using right now. So the first option, go into triggers. In triggers, there's option override YAML continuous integration trigger from here. Click over here. There is an option path filtration at the very bottom. So what you have to do, go inside, add a path filter, and let's go back to repos first and this folder. Just copy this folder name, come back over here. You can have this added this way. So what will happen now when I save it? What will happen now? Whenever there's a commit in this particular folder, for this particular folder, then only this particular build pipeline will automatically trigger, or else it will not trigger. Okay, this is one way of achieving this. The other way is mention the path field in the YAML file of the build pipeline. So this way, even in the YAML directly, you can mention the information. The same thing I can mention in the YAML. I don't have to come over here and add triggers and things like that. Okay, even though this is very helpful, very straightforward, there are other ways of doing things as well. Let's talk about that as well. So if you go inside this same build pipeline again, go in edit. Now if you see this in the trigger, I have added a path as well, included the path. This way also you can do. So by doing this becomes part of your repository. So because you're updating the YAML file. So this will make sure that when there's a change in the develop branch and when there's a change in this particular folder, only then this particular build pipeline to trigger. As simple as that. Okay, so that's it. So that's the solution for this scenario. Let's go back and see the other scenario. Scenario 8. So the question is, we have multiple build pipelines and those builds are sequential in nature and directly dependent on each other. Okay, let's understand this question. We have multiple builds. So one build is dependent on each other build. So like one build. So once ABC build is completed, then only the XYZ build should run. That is what the question is. So how do we achieve the same in Azure DevOps? Okay, straightforward. Let's go back to Azure DevOps. Let's consider this. Take this as a build, Shiva underscore web app underscore build develop. This build is directly dependent on the other build, Shiva underscore web app underscore feed. So when this feed build is successful, then only this particular build should run automatically. How exactly we can achieve it? Let's see that. Let's go back to PPT. So we can achieve it by using build completion. Okay. So again, under triggers, there's an option build completion and select the triggering build post completion. So this, let's go back and see. Again, there are two ways of doing it. One is by doing through triggers, or the other way of adding the line of code in the YAML file. Okay, let's go back and see the manual way first. Okay, so what is my requirement? I want this particular pipeline, this Shiva underscore web app underscore build to trigger automatically when this Shiva underscore web app underscore feed is completed. Okay, let's go and see that. So for doing that, I have to make changes in Shiva underscore web app. So I'll go inside it, I'll go and edit, I'll go and go back to triggers again. There's an option of build completion. Build when another build completes. Okay, don't get confused. People tends to get confused over here. Don't get confused. So I want to run this build when the other build is completed successfully. Okay, let's add it. So the build which it is, this particular build is dependent on this particular build, Shiva web app underscore feed, and branch is develop. That's totally fine for me. I'll just save it. So let's test this as well. So what I'll do, I'll go in Shiva web app and I'll just run this build quickly. So hardly it will take 10 seconds or 15 seconds to complete this build. So what my expectation is, once this build is successful, this particular build should run automatically. That is what my expectation is. Let's wait. Let's refresh this. So it's a simple build which is pushing a NuGet package into my artifacts. So that's it. Now let's refresh it. See this. So this build was automatically triggered. This got triggered because we have this particular build was successfully created, and this particular build has a direct dependency on this particular build. So this is how this is running right now. Okay, same way, let me cancel it, not needed right now. Same way, there's other way. You can even update a pipelines field the way we have created a pipeline field in my previous. We had a path field. So same way we can have a pipeline field added into my YAML file. Okay, so if you understand this YAML, so there is a pipeline called app.ci which is dependent on security-lib-ci. When this source build is successfully created, then the app-ci pipeline will automatically build. Try this by yourself. If you have some difficulty or issue, do let me know in the comment box. Okay, now the scenario 9. How to restrict a developer by not allowing him to push any messy commit history into a remote repository like remote branch like developer release from her feature branch. So take a developer scenario. Being a developer, you will create a local branch for yourself, okay, wherein you'll do all your development work, all your development activities. So while doing it, you'll have multiple commits. Okay, so you'll have around 100 200 commits. So if you push everything into develop, so your develop history will look very messy. So I have covered this scenario in a different way in my previous tutorial, okay, in my previous part, but over here it's different. Okay, so how do we restrict? So the question is, how do we restrict the user, the developer? Okay, because if he tends to push everything into develop, the develop branch history will be very messy, and there are so many other developers working on that particular branch. So how do we restrict? So the best way of restricting is by enforcing branch policy. Okay. So how exactly we can achieve it? So the question, by enforcing branch policies on branches, making sure only specific types of merge is permitted. Okay. So in this scenario, if I enforce a branch policy that whenever there is a PR, that's a pull request created from a feature branch to a develop or a release branch, only squash merge should be permitted to the developer, nothing else he can do. So by doing that, we can achieve this scenario. How exactly that can be done? Let's go back and see. So in repos, so come back into branches. If you see this in develop, there is an option. Click on more option. Come over here in the branches policy. In this, if you come down, there are other branch policies also which you can enforce. I'm not talking about those right now. So we are talking about limited merge types. In this, I can enforce that only squash merge is permitted. So when the developer is creating a PR, at that time, during the completion, he will just get an option of squash merge. All other merge type would be restricted. By doing this, you can enforce branching policy and developer would be forced to use only squash merge. That is what this question is all about. Enforcing, restricting the developer to use only a specific type of merge commit. Okay. Depending upon your scenario, depending upon your questions which you're getting, you can tweak this question and you can tweak your answer. Okay. If someone is asking like how do we enforce basic merge type, same way. Okay. How do we make sure that there are limited set of reviewers? You can come and enforce branch policy. How do we make sure that the work items are linked? Okay. Depending upon questions, you can tweak your answers. Okay. Let's come back to the next scenario. Scenario 10. Consider I have multiple commonly used pipeline variables. This could be a build pipeline also, or it could be a release pipeline also. How do I make sure those variables are defined once and reused or referenced in multiple pipelines whenever required? So understand this question, we have pipeline variables. So there are multiple pipeline variables which are commonly used across multiple pipelines. So one way is you go and define those pipeline variables in the pipeline section manually, but that is very clumsy. Okay. So you're talking about automation and doing manual things again and again for commonly used tasks. Let's go back on Azure DevOps and see that. Okay. Consider these are my release pipelines. If I go inside this pipeline, I have multiple variables created, and there are so many common variables also I have created. So among this, there are some common variables which I would be using in multiple other pipelines as well. If it is one or two pipeline, there's no need. But if it is around 100 200 pipelines wherein you're using those common variables, so it doesn't make sense of going and adding in each pipelines. So how do we achieve it? So let's go back and see. Okay, this can be achieved using variable group. Okay, so by creating a variable group and defining commonly used variables. Great. How exactly we can do it? Let's go back and see. So inside pipeline, there's an option called library. Okay, if you guys don't know, inside library, there is an option of creating a variable group. You can give a name to this variable group and you can have this commonly used variables created and the values mentioned right over here. After doing this, for example, I have a variable group created over here. So I have three variables: environment, resource group, service plan. These are the three variables and the values which I have given over here. Now if I go back into my releases, let's take an example of this. If I edit this and if I want to use those commonly created variables inside my pipeline, the easiest way is go inside variable groups. There's an option to link. If you click on link, you can select, you can link it. Now if you just select the drop down, here we go. all those variables which we have created inside the library, it is part of my pipeline now. So this is I have added into one pipeline. Similarly, if I want to add it into some other pipeline, let's take an example of this. I can simply go in variable group and select it. You can select even you can even select based on stages. Okay. So if you have multiple stages inside your pipeline, you can even select based on stages. But for now, I'm just selecting it for release. Here we go. So it's been added into two pipelines. So this is the best way. So this will work only if you have a commonly used variables across pipelines. Okay, then only you can go ahead and use this option. There's a very important feature of variable groups which you will be using a lot. Variable groups can be even used to link secrets from an Azure Key Vault as variable. So this is very classic example. Okay, now if I go back, if you see this, I can link my Azure Key Vault directly. So the classic example is, suppose you have a database. You are deploying things into your database. Okay, so you'll be using SQL database passwords. So definitely you'll not put that password directly into your pipeline as a plain text. Again, if you're doing it, it's a security breach. Never do it. So what is the best way? You can create a key vault. You can put your password in the key vault, and you can directly link that particular key vault as a variable group. Okay, when you're doing it, so definitely that database password you'll be using for multiple other pipelines. That's a commonly used variable which we are talking about right now. So the easier, once you create and once you link, you can directly start adding your database variable, your database password variable inside your pipeline. And using a Azure Key Vault task, you can download that password from the Key Vault directly. So that is a classic example of using variable group. Okay, and this is a very important question on security. How do you secure passwords in pipeline or any sensitive information in pipelines, and how do you reference those into your pipelines? Okay, these are I can eventually make 5-6 questions on this part also. Okay, but these are the example. These are the questions which would be asked about security. Okay, remember that, guys. Okay, let's go move back. Okay, so again a scenario 11. Consider I have a multiple commonly used pipeline task. Okay, the question is different over here. We have commonly used pipeline task. How do I make sure those tasks are created and defined once and reused or referenced in multiple build or release pipelines whenever required? Okay, so in the previous question we have commonly used variables. Now I have commonly used task. Okay, let's go back and see. Okay, so that can be achieved. Let's see how exactly we can achieve it. That can be achieved by using task groups. So basically you're grouping one or more commonly used tasks in a task group. Okay, so what is the benefit of doing that? We can manage the task from a central location if there's a changes, and we can call or reference that task very easily. How exactly we can achieve it? Let's see that. So I have a task group created under pipelines. I have a task group created. So basically I'm building a .NET application using this task group, wherein I have a NuGet installer, NuGet restore, building the solution, then publishing the artifact. This is what this example task group is doing. How exactly this is created? Let's see first. Now let's go back to releases. I believe this. Let's take an example of this pipeline itself. Okay, now how exactly this is if you want to create a task group. So I have a task of, there are two tasks, like it's a ARM template. I don't know if it's a relevant scenario to give you, and this is a deployment template what you have. So this is just how do we create a task group. This is not a relevant example, I think. So if you want to create a task group, just highlight both the task, whichever task you want to create, right click, there's an option to create a task group. Okay, you can give a name to this task, you can give a description, you can select the category, and you can select the variables, and you can give the default values of those variables. Okay, this is how you can create a task group. Let's go back to the previous task which was created, and this is how, once the task group is created, this is how it will reflect inside the task group section. Okay, if you want to manage, if you want to change anything, you can directly do it from here, and once you do it, it will replicate wherever you're using this particular task. Okay, and this particular task was created based out of this one. So this was a task which is, so that four tasks has been clubbed together as one single task over here, and which is doing this exact same thing which is mentioned inside the task group. And how do you reference those task group inside your uh, the task which you have created? What is the name of the task? ASP.NET build. How do you reference? If you want to reference this inside a build, you can easily do it by creating a build or release. So let's create a build. Just select randomly. Okay, over here I just select empty job for now. So I have a task group with the name ASP.NET. So I'll just click on plus. I'll just look for it, ASP.NET. See this, ASP.NET created by DevOps Mela. This is something I have created. So if I want to reference those tasks directly, here we go. So four tasks, we earlier had four tasks. It's all clubbed together into one single task, and whenever you want to call it, it's very easy to call those tasks inside a build or a release pipeline. Okay, so this is all about task group. And one important thing about task group, task groups are only available in a classic model. In YAML you cannot use task group, remember that. So that's it from this part, guys. So it was, do let me know how did you like the video. Put it in the comment box if you want more parts, and do let me know if you want any other topics like Terraform, Kubernetes, Ansible, Docker, interview questions on those, a similar type of interview questions on those topics. Do let me know in the comment box. And if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching DevOps, and thank you for supporting. Goodbye.
Hello all and welcome to my channel DevOps Mela. This is Rohit Singh and welcome to my Azure DevOps interview question series. And this is part 3. If you have not seen my previous videos, guys, please see my part 1 and part 2. Please check out my interview playlist. Not just Azure DevOps, I have questions related to Docker, Terraform as well. Okay, now let's start with this Azure DevOps part 3. A new set of questions. Let's see what exactly we have. The first question is, how do we add custom fields in work item? Very interesting question. So there are 4 work item process what we have right now, that is Scrum, Agile, Basic and CMMI. So all those process have some default tabs, some default work items. What if you want to add a new work item? Like in Agile you got user story, you want to add something new, or inside user story you want to add some custom fields. That's quite a common scenario which you will come across. How exactly can we achieve the same in Azure DevOps? So this can be achieved through the inheritance process. So it's just one liner, guys. Let's go and see how exactly this is done. Okay, let me go back to my Azure DevOps. I'm already logged in right now, dev.azure.com, and let me look for an account. Let me take this account, this project, basically Azure DevOps Mela 3 project. And if you go in boards, so these are the user stories what I have. Just think of it that in your user story, like in your planning section, you want something, a date and time tab, like current release date or something like that, an additional field you want, or you want something over here in the description, like we have description, acceptance criteria, discussion, you want a new tab over here, or if you want a new tab within this section. Okay, so is it possible? So yes, this is definitely possible. Or just think of, you want to have altogether a new work item in this list. You want something like release, so whatever work item you can think of, some new work item over here. Is it possible? So yes, it's possible. How exactly we can do it? We cannot edit the existing process, the default process which is provided by Azure, but yes, we can definitely create a new one. How can we do that? Let's go on the organization settings. Under organization setting, there are something called boards. Inside board, there are process. In this process, these are the four processes what we have: basic, agile, scrum, and CMMI. Let's take an example that I want to add some additional field inside work item user story. Okay, so for that I can do one thing. I can go ahead and create a inherit. I can inherit the existing process into a new process. So let me name it as agile copy so that we know what exactly we are doing. So this is a copy of an agile process. Let's give a description. Let's copy paste the same thing. So basically I got a new process added which is a copy of my existing agile process. Now when I go inside this, if I want to add a new work item, I can simply click on it and I can add a new work item. Or if I want to go and edit the existing work item, like for an example user story, I can come down to user story. Let me refresh the screen first. Okay, I can come down to user story. You can see the user story layout now. What did I say? I want to add a new date and time tab, correct? Under planning. So let's go in planning, click on new field. You can add a new field from here or you can add a new field from here also. So click on new field. Let's name it as current release date or whatever name you want to give. It's totally up to you. What is the type you want? You want a different type, like you want date and time, correct? If you want to add something over here and put current release date, added. Now if you see, I got some current release date added. This is the additional things what we have added. Now how do I use it? How do I verify if this field is added? Can I go in an existing project and see if that particular field is visible now? Let's try that. Let's create a new work item with user story. No, I don't see that. This is because you need to create a new project under the new process what you have created. Then only the new field which you have added will be visible. How do we verify? Click a new one. Name it as test. I'm creating a new project. Under advanced, if I go in the work item process, there is an additional tab agile copy. So let's use this agile copy for now. Create a new process. So create a new project under the new process what we have defined. Perfect. Now if I go under boards, under new work item, user story, do you see current release date? And if I can go and select the date. Perfect. This is how you can customize work item fields. Okay guys, that was the question. That is through inheritance process. Perfect. Let's move on. Very interesting question. Work item user story, to be very specific, are not visible under the boards tab. Let's understand this question first. Let's go to the previous project again because I don't have any work item to demonstrate in this project. Now if you go in the boards, if you see, I have applied a filter at the user story. Now if you see, how many user story do I have? I have around 5 user stories right now in the list. But the same, if I go in this boards section, which is very similar to Kanban board, I just see 2 user stories. Okay, I see 3 user story 340 and the user story 313. Rest other user stories are not visible, like 311, 301, 310. These are not visible. What possible is the reason why this is not visible? Let's go and look into it. The possible reason is by default only default area work items are visible under the boards tab. Now if you go and look into user story closely, the one which is not visible on the boards tab, we got area part defined. We got production, we got debugging, we got something called production over here also. And the two which is visible, it is created under project area path. That's a default area path. So what exactly is area path? And if you see, and since area path is defined for the given project, the given items are not visible. What exactly is area path? Area path allows you to group work items by team, product or feature area. This field allows you to define a hierarchy of path. Like you can segregate your work item, like your user story will be under production, user story would be different, your development user story would be different, your QA would be different. So this way you can segregate your work items with the help of area path. Now in this project the area path is defined because of that reason the user stories are not visible under board section, but I still want to see those user stories. How exactly can we do that? For do that we need to go and make some changes. Go into the project settings, come down and under boards there is an option of project configuration. Under project configuration, if you see, there is area. I have defined areas like under, this is the default area, Azure DevOps Mela -3 _3 is default. Under this I got multiple areas, sub areas created. So if you want to view user story which belongs to this sub areas, you have to go in team configuration, go to areas, and over here the default area which is set, change it to include sub areas as well. Okay. Now let's click OK. Now go back to your boards again. Perfect. Now I have included everything now, and everything is visible right now. All the sub areas, even the closed one, everything is visible right now. Okay. If I just remove this user story tab, so these are all my work items. Okay. This is how you can view if the user stories are not visible. Not just user story guys, if even the features are not visible, story epics are not visible, this is just because of the sub areas. Okay, let's go to the next question. Very interesting one. How do we enable event driven notification in Azure DevOps and send them across as notification or other messaging apps? Very interesting. Let's understand this question again. Like suppose, let me give you a scenario. Suppose you have a build and release pipeline created and you want to send the build and release status update, like whether the build was successful, failed, stuck, such status update. If you want to send it across other messaging tools, the messaging apps such as Slack for example. How can we achieve that in Azure DevOps? Think of it. The possible answer is service hooks. What exactly service hooks will do? Service hooks let you run tasks on other services when event happens in your project in Azure DevOps. For example, you have a build pipeline, the build pipeline succeeded. So it's an event which has occurred and you want to send that completion message on Slack. So that can be achieved using service hooks. Service hooks works on publisher and subscription method. So publisher will define set of events, subscriber will subscribe to those events, and when the event occurs, the notification will be sent to that particular channel. Like in my case I'm talking about Slack, but from Slack, if you want to take, after receiving that message, if you want to trigger some more actions, even that is possible. Now for doing this guys, if I want to demonstrate this practically, so you guys need a Slack account for that. Slack account is free account guys, you don't have to pay anything. Just go ahead and create a free Slack account. Once you create a free Slack account, you need to create a new workspace. Now if you see, I got a DevOps Mailer workspace created. Now if I go, when I click on this launch Slack, it will take me to this screen. Now these are my channels, guys. These are my channels. It's already created. What for this demo, what I'll do, I'll create a new channel. Let me name this channel as Azure DevOps, to be very specific. DevOps. Okay, let's add this as a description. Make it private, it's up to you, or I'll just create a channel. Okay, so I got a Azure DevOps channel created. So basically all my notification will be sent in this channel. Okay, that is the first step. The other step is you need to create an app. Okay, basically you need to create an app and register it. So how do we create an app in Slack? So let's do Slack. Just look for Google Slack app registration or create, whatever you put. It will take you to this API link. Click on this. Make sure that you're logged in Slack before coming to this link. Now if you see this, I'm automatically logged in, and this is an option from where I can go ahead and create a new app. Before I go and start creating a new app, I already have two apps created for Falco and Grafana for one of my tutorial, the live sessions for what I take. So similarly, I can go ahead and create a new app over here. But before that, let me go to my project. Let me go to project settings and let me introduce you to the service hook, how exactly you can create a service hooks. So click on service hooks. This is the place wherein you can create a service hook, create subscription. Now there are n number of service hooks you can create, guys. Like you can create a service hook for Jenkins, for example. You want to trigger a build at Jenkins, and once the build is successful, you want to send a notification on Azure DevOps, and you want to trigger something on Azure DevOps. Even that is possible. You can integrate Jenkins as well. Okay. Multiple Grafana, you can integrate Datadog. What are we looking for? We are looking for Slack. So this is the Slack. Okay. Support all events, post message to the channel. This is what we are looking for right now. Let's click next. Build, trigger on the type of event. What type of event you want to trigger? So what did I say? We can have build completed, code post. There are many n number of triggers which you can go and look for. For now, I just look for build completed. Any pipelines, any status, that is totally fine. But if you want to filter out with my pipeline, there are n number of pipeline which I have. Build status, succeeded, partially succeeded, failed, stop. You can select anyone. Let's go and hit next. So basically what exactly it is looking for? It is looking for Slack webhook URL. How do we create that URL? That is what I'll show you. Come back to the Slack registration page. Create new app from scratch. App name, let's name it as Azure-DevOps. Build status of it if you want to write. Select a workspace. We have a workspace DevOps mailer. Create app. Okay. So now if you come down, there are multiple, you can have incoming hooks, interactive component. There are multiple types you can select. In I'm looking for incoming hooks. So what exactly it does? It will post messages from external source into Slack. That is what I'm looking for, correct? So I'll select this. I'll come down and activate incoming webhooks. So basically I'll just hit on. When it is on, if you come down, there is a URL which will be created once you click on webhook URL. If you want to test, just run this curl command and a message will be posted over here if you want to test. Okay, or else just click on add new webhook URL. Select your channel name, Azure DevOps, click on allow. Come down, you will see a URL. Copy this URL, come back over here, click. If you want to test it, click on test. It will send a notification. Succeeded. Let's check if we have received the notification. Perfect. You see, I've received a notification with Azure DevOps build. This is the notification which we just received it. Okay, let's go back and click on finish. We have a service hook created. Now let's test it. How do I test it? I can simply go and run any of my pipeline. Let me look for some small pipeline which This will take 40 seconds, so let me just run this. So this is basically my ARM, my ASP.NET build pipeline, guys. So this is basically, this project is from my live session project. So all these pipelines are created when I took the live sessions. Okay. Guys, if you have not subscribed, if you're new, if you're viewing my channel for the very first time, please do subscribe and please give your valuable feedback, comments, and any new topic you want me to cover. Please put your thoughts in my comment, or you can even visit my website devopsmela.in, or you can even write to me at devopsmela@gmail, or you can follow me on Instagram. The name is very simple, devopsmela. Let's wait and watch. Let's wait and come back once this is done, guys. Thank you. Okay guys, if you see, my build was successful. Now let's go and verify on my Slack channel if I have received the notification or not. So yes, I have received the notification. Now if you see build succeeded, this is my build number. If you want to match, it's 2022-11-22.1. This is the build number, 2022-11-22.1. This is the notification what we have received. The notification is succeeded. Okay. It took duration 1 minute 28 seconds. Requested by DevOpsMela, build pipeline, Azure web app _build _ classics. Even the naming convention is right. Okay. This is how we can send notification on event-based notification on Slack. This is one of the notification tool using service hooks. Perfect. Let's go into the next topic. Next question. How do we enforce policy to automatically include a group as a pull request approver? So if you are following my channel, in my previous part, we have seen this, like how do we add an individual person as a approver. Now the question is different over here. This time I'm not asking for individual person, I'm asking how do I add a group. So if I say I have a group of 10 people, any one or two people can go and approve my PR. Okay, so that is quite possible. How can we do it? We can do it by enabling branch policy and adding a group as an automatic approver. Okay, perfect. Let's go and see this in practical. Let's see if I have a group first. Okay, I do have a tester group and I do have a group called Azure DevOps Mailer team. I just have one user members in it, but if you want to add more, even that is okay. But let's go and check how do we enable policies. So under branches, this is the only branch. If I want to allow a group of people to approve something when there is a changes into my main branch, like suppose there is a pull request created between dev and main, and at that time I want to have a list of people to be added, a group to be added, so that they can go and approve my PR. So I can go and enable branching policies, and in this, if I come down, I can add required number of people as 2, and if I come down, automatically include reviewers. So let me create. Now in place of reviewers, what I can do, I can go and add a group. So if you have seen it, I have a tester group created. I can go and add a tester. Minimum number of reviewers, if you want, add 2, 3, whatever people. So 2 people minimum has to approve your PR. Now this is how you will be adding a group. Now a group is added. How do we test it? I just have one branch in this repository. I can do one thing. I can create one more branch quickly, but again will not have anything to pull because it's exact replica of main. So I can do one thing quickly, edit something. Let me add something into my quick scan.yaml. This is again a file which I use for my training. Let's remove this part, archive part. Okay, let me do a commit. So just basically I'm just making an additional change so that we have something to create a PR. So let's go and create a pull request. new pull request. Now I have one change in my Jenkins file. Let me go and create. Now if you see this, automatically a group is added, not individual person now. I'm talking about a group, and I can go and still approve it because I'm part of that group. But if you remember, we have mentioned minimum two. So one of two approvals has approved it already. So this is how you can achieve this. Let me abandon this pipeline because we are not using it. Let's abandon this. Okay, perfect. Let's go to the next question, guys. Very interesting question. What is the difference between environments and deployment groups under pipeline? Now if I come down to my pipeline section, there is something called environments over here, and there is something called deployment groups over here. Now what exactly is this environments and deployment groups? Let's see that. A deployment group is a logical set of deployment target machines that have agent installed on each one. Let me tell you in a very layman term. Imagine you got dev environment. There are 5 dev environment: dev 1, dev 2, dev 3, dev 4 or dev 5. All these 5 VMs will be grouped together under dev, under a group named dev. Now when you're running a deployment, you will be deploying your changes on group dev. Eventually all your changes will be deployed on all the 5 servers. So this is how grouping is done in Azure DevOps. Deployment group represent the physical environment, as I said, VMs. For example, dev, test or production environment. Deployment groups are only available with classic release pipelines. It's not available with YAML based. Keep that in mind. Plus, if you have deployment group, there's no need of agent pool, additional agent pool, because if you see on each and every machine, we are installing agent on top of it. And on the other hand, environments represent a collection of resources such as namespaces within Kubernetes, Azure Web App, virtual machines, which can be targeted by deployments from a pipeline. In my personal opinion, the deployment group and environment have the same theory. Since deployment group is not supported by YAML, environment comes in such cases. Okay, the Kubernetes resources and the virtual machines resources are the only supported type right now in environments. All others are not supported, guys. Keep that in mind. Beside grouping of resources with environment, there are multiple other advantages, such as you can have deployment history. There are traceability of commits. It can even do diagnose resource health. You can even play around with permissions in environments. Okay, so these are the core difference of deployment groups and environment. Keep in mind, deployment group is only supported by classic, wherein an environment is only supported by YAML based pipelines. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What are the different types of deployment strategies in Azure DevOps? Again, a very interesting question. What are the different types of deployment strategy do we have in Azure DevOps? Let's go and look into. The first one is run once. Run once is nothing but this is the simplest deployment strategy, wherein all the lifecycle hooks such as pre-deploy step, your deploy stage, route traffic, post-route traffic are executed at least once. Now if you want to view the run once strategy example, I do have a pipeline based on run once. Let me go and show you that. Okay, this is the one wherein I have multi-stage deployment over here. If I go and edit this pipeline, and if I come down, this is a multi-stage deployment. Basically, I got build stage and I got release stage over here. Now if you see in the release stage, there is a deployment. The job is deployment, and the strategy which I am using right now, it is run once, and the hook which I'm using, it's a deploy hook which I'm using right now. So what does this mean? At least this hooks will get executed at least once when I run this pipeline. Okay, that is one of the deployment strategy what we have. The other deployment strategy is the rolling deployment strategy. So a rolling deployment replaces instance of the previous version of an application with instance of the new version of the application on a fixed set of virtual machines in each iteration. So basically, if you have deployed previously version 1.0, now it will go and replace that with version 1.1 with the new changes. Okay, that is rolling strategy. And the third and not the least is the canary one. Canary deployment strategy is an advanced deployment strategy that helps mitigate the risk involved in rolling out new version of your application. By using this strategy, you can roll out changes to a small set of server first. Like suppose you have group of 10 servers, and if you want to deploy your changes on 2 of the VMs first, once post that you want to eventually go on 2 this if you want to take that approach, then canary is the best one, wherein it will deploy changes on first subsets, then you can go and test it. If it's all looking good, then you can eventually move on to the next set of servers. That is canary for you guys. So these are the 3 deployment strategies what we have in Azure DevOps. To be very precise, run once, rolling, canary. Let's move on to the next question. What is the maximum size of commits we can push in Azure repos, and how do we restrict the push size? This is very important, guys. You cannot allow anyone to push any given number of commits, a big chunk of commit in your repository. That will make your build process very slow. I'll tell you how. First, let's see the answer. What is the size of commit we can push in Azure repos? The answer is pushes are limited to 5 GB at a time. So you can push 5 GB at a time, you can push into Azure repos, and I will never recommend to push such a big chunk as a commit to your remote repository, because this will take a good amount of time. And if your repository is big, it has good number of files, it may eventually impact your build pipeline, because if you go and look into your build pipeline logs, while it does the initialization, it clones your existing repository on the agent. Even though there are ways to restrict that too, but that is something we are not talking in this topic. Okay, there are different ways to handle such cases, but the prerequisite is you should not allow such big pushes to your remote repository. Then how do we restrict? The other question is, how do we restrict? I can show you that by going into your project settings, go to your repository. Under repositories, let's take an example of this repository, Azure Web App. Go into policies, come down, there is an option of maximum file size. You can go and select. If you just want to allow 10 MB at a time, then you can go and select this. This is how you will be restricting your push size to your repository. Okay, let's go to the next question, guys. Can we recover recently deleted project in Azure DevOps? So the answer is yes. Yes, within the first 28 days from the deletion, a project can be recovered. Remember the date, first 28 days from the deletion. Post that, the project will be permanently deleted. One more condition, only an organization owner can restore a deleted project, or a person who is part of project collection administrative group. Only these peoples can recover your deleted project. How do we do it? Let's see the demo. If I go in the organization settings, I got a project. Let's go in project. So we just created this test project, remember? I can go and delete this. Now if you see, as soon as I'm deleting, what exactly it's saying, you will have up to 28 days to recover this project. Okay, now let's delete this project and let's see if we can recover. And FYI, I am the owner of this particular organization, guys, and plus I'm added to the group also. Because I'm the owner, I'm automatically added. Now how do I recover? So when you go to projects, when you come down, do you see there's the option view recently deleted project? Go over here. This was the project which we deleted today. That's 1122. Okay guys, this was the project which was deleted today. So if I want to recover, I can simply click over here and click on restore project. So everything will be restored. If you have any build pipeline, work items, everything will get restored. Okay. If I go to Azure DevOps now, see, this is my project which got restored. This is how you can go ahead and restore a deleted project. Okay guys, let's go back to the next question. Okay, very interesting one. Difference between Azure DevOps services and Azure DevOps server. Let me tell you, I take n number of interviews guys for my company, and this is a very simple, even though it looks like a very simple question, most of you folks gets confused what exactly is the difference. Now when I say what is the difference between Azure DevOps services and server, they talk about Azure repos, the services, pipelines, artifacts and all. No, that is absolutely wrong. Let's understand the difference between these two. The first is Azure DevOps service. The first one is Azure DevOps service. It's a cloud offering guys. Okay, it provides scalable, reliable and globally available hosted service backed by a 99.9% SLA provided by Azure. It is monitored 24/7 and available in local data center across the world. Similar to what you have Azure Cloud, AWS Cloud, is the same set of service. So you can access your organization, Azure DevOps organization, from anywhere in the world. This is a cloud offering. You just need a Microsoft account, sign in, and you are ready to start working on Azure DevOps. That is what Azure DevOps service is all about. On the other hand, this is Azure DevOps server. This is basically an on-prem offering by Azure built on SQL Server backend. Okay. Usually this is we choose this on-prem version when we need our data to stay within a network. So this is for those companies wherein they don't want their data to move outside their network, even to go on secure cloud, nowhere. They want their data on-prem. Everything should be inside their network. Nothing should go out. Okay. Or condition when we want to access the SQL Server reporting service that is tightly integrated with Azure DevOps server data and tools. So if you want to integrate your SQL Server reporting service with Azure DevOps, then this is the right option for you. So these are the major differences. One is cloud offering, the second one is on-prem offering. That's it for me today guys. That's it from part 3. Please let me know in the comment box how did you like this video, and if you want any new topics, any new part in the future, please do let me know. Your feedback is very important for me, and if you guys have not subscribed, please do subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Hello all and welcome to my channel DevOps Mela. This is Rohit Singh and welcome to my series interview question with practical solution series. So based on your request, I have come up with the other part wherein I'll be covering Terraform scenario based interview questions with practical solutions. So let me reiterate again, I'll not be asking what is Terraform, what is infrastructure as a code and things like that. Such basic questions you can easily find it on Google. So we'll focus on practical questions. We'll focus on even if it's the simplest question, I'll be wrapping it up in a practical solution, in a scenario based solution, and you have to think before answering. Okay. And if you guys are new to this channel, if you have not seen this video, if not seen my interview questions video, please go and check my interview question playlist. I have multiple parts already done wherein I have covered Azure DevOps. And if you guys are existing subscribers, please put down your views and comments in the comment box and let me know what else you need from me. Okay, that's it from me. Let's start with the interview questions. Okay, the first question is explain core Terraform end-to-end workflow to deploy and delete resources in cloud. Don't focus on Azure or AWS. It could be same for other cloud providers as well, GCP. The workflow will not change. So this workflow, it seems it's a very easy question, okay, but it's if you go for a DevOps interview and if they're asking Terraform related question, this is the first question, and 80 to 90% this is the question they will definitely ask. So how do we tackle such question? What exactly is the flow, and how do we talk about the flow in front of the interviewers? Let's see that. Okay, so if I'm talking about Terraform flow, I'm not talking about how you write the configuration. I'm talking about the exact step which you will take from writing the configuration, from initializing till applying the configuration, and later destroying it. Okay, so the very first step is about write. So in short, you're writing your configuration. So let's go back to my IDE. Okay, so this is IDE VS Code in which I have already have a configuration written. So this is what I'm talking about, writing a configuration wherein I have a Terraform provider and I'll be deploying this on Azure RM, so Azure Cloud. So that is the reason I'm using Azure RM as my provider. Then I'm just creating a simple resource group inside a mod. Even I have a module, and using this module, it's an open source module. You can easily find it on Terraform Cloud, on the Terraform registry. So using this module, I'm just creating a simple resource group. So this is what I'm talking about, writing a configuration. The second thing is init, initializing working directory containing Terraform configuration files. So basically going ahead and initializing this working directory. Okay, so what happens, this provider file will get downloaded first in that working directory. So when I go ahead and do a initialize, a .terraform file will be created, a hidden file will be created, and in that there would be two files which will be added. Once this provider file, and plus I'm even using a module, even this module file will get downloaded. Okay, how exactly it is done, let me show you. Okay, I think I've already ran terraform init, and if you see a .terraform file was created, let's go and look into that file. Okay, now if you see this, I have a module file and I have a provider information. So this is what happens when you run the command terraform init. Okay, it will start initializing your directory. So it's already there, so it will not do it again for me. Okay, so now the next is validate. So by running this command terraform validate, it will validate terraform configuration file for synthetical and internal consistency. So synthetical is nothing but it will check for syntax. If there's any syntax error or things like that, that will go and fix those for you automatically. So that is what, or if there is any error, it will throw that error that there's a syntax error, and it will make sure that your configuration are consistent. Okay, that is what the validate will do. So simply you can do run the command terraform validate. Okay, that is the third step which you can do. And the next command is terraform plan. So plan is nothing but it's a preview changes before applying. So what exactly your configuration is gonna create on your cloud, and if you want to preview that beforehand, then this is the command which you will run, terraform plan. So it's kind of a quick preview to check what exactly is getting created when I go and run the command terraform apply. Okay, so this plan may take time. Let's wait and let's come back once the plan is ready. Okay, the plan is ready. We have the output. Now if you see, there are two resources which is getting created. Okay, now I have a resource with the name Azure caf underscore name.rg. This is what I'm creating right now. The name is DevOps project, and I have a second resource which is the resource group which I'm creating main underscore rg. So these are the two resources which is getting created. That is, we know. Now the next step is apply. So provision, apply is so whatever we have planned till now, if you want to apply those changes in Azure cloud, then you run the command terraform apply. So it will provision your infrastructure on cloud. Okay, so if I just go ahead and do it, terraform apply. Okay, when I run this command, it will go and before executing it will ask for my approval, whether I have to go ahead with this plan or not. And if you want to skip that part, you can just simply do auto approve. So it will not ask for any approval. It will go ahead and create that for you. Okay, approve spelling mistake. Okay, it may take time. Let's hold down and let's come back once my resource is created on Azure cloud. Okay. Okay guys, so apply was successful. The resources are created. If you want to go ahead and check, this is my portal. I'll go ahead and click on resource group. Yeah, this was a resource which I was creating. So this was successfully created. This resource group was created successfully. Okay, let's come back. And later we can destroy. Destroy is basically it will go and delete the resources which you just created. Okay, so the command is terraform destroy. Okay, now again it will ask for approval. Again, if you use the flag auto approve, it will not ask for any approval. Okay, I'll not destroy it right now because there are further questions which I want to cover before destroying. So this is how the flow is. Starting from writing the configuration, initializing the folder, validating the syntax error, planning, apply, and destroy. This is how you answer when they ask for end-to-end workflow on Terraform. And there's one more command which you can see, terraform format. This is basically helps you to rewrite Terraform configuration to a canonical format. Canonical format is nothing but the different set of rules, regulation, law what Terraform has set for writing the configuration. This is what it does. If you run the command terraform format, if there's any formatting error, it will make sure it rewrites that configuration file for you. Okay, that's it from this question. Let's move on to another part, other scenario. Okay, so the other question is, we have existing Terraform infrastructure created in cloud. Again, whichever cloud it is, doesn't matter. Now, one particular resource needs to be recreated whenever we do the next apply. Okay, listen to this question very carefully. We already have an existing resource created in cloud. Okay, and one of the particular resource needs to be recreated. Why it needs to be recreated? It could be any XYZ reason. One of the scenario I can think of right now, think of as an EC2 instance, and one of the EC2 instance status is failing. So the status check is failing. Now you want to recreate that particular EC2 instance. So how exactly we can do it? Using Terraform. Okay, so this is a very genuine scenario. You may face this scenario. So let's see how exactly we can achieve that in Terraform. So that can be achieved using tainting. So in Terraform, we have a concept called taint, Terraform taint. This command informs Terraform that a particular object or resource has become degraded or damaged and needed to be replaced in the next apply. Okay, so when you taint a particular resource, okay, so the status of that particular resource gets changed in the tf state file, and when you run the apply for the next time, that particular resource gets recreated. How exactly that is done? Let's come back. This is the resource which we created last time, and if I want to view what all resources we have created in the state file, so there's a better way of viewing it. We can go ahead and check in the state file first. Let's go and do that first. This is the state file which was created. So we can see the resources over here, what resources were created and things like that. So we have Azure CAF, which was created, and then we have a resource group which was created. These are the two resources what we have created the last time. So the better way to check is, just a second. Okay, the better way to check is terraform state list. So this will give you the list of resources which were created using the state file. So there are two resources which were created. The first is Azure CAF and the second is the resource group which we created. Now if you want to taint this resource, so that when we do the next apply, this resource needs to be deleted and needs to be recreated again. Okay, so the simple way of tainting is just go ahead and write terraform taint followed by the resource name. That's it. Now if you hit enter, has been marked as tainted. Now if I go and view the state file now, see the state file needs to be reloaded now because we tainted the particular resource. Now if I run the command, let's see what happens. Terraform apply will go and recreate. I don't want to do that for now. I'll just run simply plan, and plan will give an understanding what exactly it's getting recreated and things like that. So it's refreshing the state file. Let's see what happens. So basically it will tell you what is getting recreated and things like that. So let's wait while this plan is running. Okay, it's done. Now if you see this is getting replaced. This module is tainted and so must be replaced. So this is what I was saying. Okay, now if I want to untaint, so I don't want this to taint this. Okay, so if I want to untaint, I can simply go and write the command terraform untaint with the resource name. Now if I go back to my state file, the status might have been changed till now. Okay. This is what terraform taint is all about. Okay, now an important note, terraform taint command is deprecated. Okay, so instead of terraform taint you can use the flag -replace. So this is how you can use terraform apply -replace equals to the resource name. Okay, so you can get the resource name with the state list. Okay, that's it from this scenario. Let's go back to the third scenario. Explain or walk through step-by-step process to secure TF state file and by making it readily available for other developers within the team. So for now guys, if you have seen my folder, my TF state file is getting created right over here, right in this location. Okay, this is the state file which I'm creating. Okay, now this is if I'm a single developer, if I'm working all alone, then it's totally fine for me because I'm the only developer who is using the state file and things like that. This is totally fine for me. But what if you're working in a team and there are 10 other developers who are using the same infrastructure, using the same Terraform? So keeping it on local is not an option. So when I was taking interviews, someone said like we can keep it in a repository, Git repository. Okay, you can keep it. I'm not denying on that. But the problem is if you keep this TF state file in a repository, it contains sensitive information such as database passwords. Okay, so for example, database passwords. So you cannot keep a state file in a repository which contains sensitive information. It's again a breach of security. Okay, so what is the next option? So the better way is for keeping the things in backend remotely. Backend is like you keep it in Azure storage account, you keep it in S3 and things like that. So what exactly backend is? Let's see that. So backends define where the Terraform state snapshot are stored. Okay, so let's go and see on Terraform website itself I'll just call it for backend, Terraform backends. Okay, the first link. So backend defines where Terraform state snapshot are stored. Okay. Now if you see, there are multiple backends available. So in my case, I'll be using Azure RM, but feel free to go and use S3. There are S3, there are Kubernetes, there are local, there are remote, there are etcd. Feel free to go ahead and use it. Now in Azure RM, this is a configuration which I have to use it. So this configuration will come inside Terraform block. Okay, so there's a backend. You have to give the resource name, you have to give the storage name, the container name, and the key. And this things needs to be created beforehand. Okay, now if I go back in my cloud, if you go in my storage account, I have a storage account created, DevOps Mailer, and I have a resource group created, DevOps Mailer RG, and even I have a container created, TF state container, right over here. Okay, so I have this in this all things created. The only thing is I need to put this command inside my Terraform block. So I do have that over here, so I'll just copy this, and not in this file, I'll go in some other file and I'll make that changes. So over here, alright, I do have a backend block inside it, so I don't need to copy. So if you see, I have a Terraform block, I have the provider. Inside the Terraform block, I have this backend block now. Then I have the provider. Then I am creating a simple resource of creating a resource. I'm creating a resource group over here now, my GRP. Okay, my group. So previously I showed you a different way of creating a resource group using a module, and this time I'm just creating a simple resource group. And the only difference is my TF state file will be stored in my storage account, not locally. That is a major difference. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, it's in my 07 folder. Okay, now init is already done. If you see, I already have a .terraform file inside my folder. So that means I've already done the initialization. Not this. This is the folder which I'm looking for. Okay, I'll go ahead and just run the apply command over here, because init and things are already done. So when I do the apply, it will go ahead and create this resource group for me, and then later it will create a state file inside the storage account. Okay, let's wait while the apply is running, and let's come back when the apply is successful. Okay, guys, one important feature I wanted to talk about: acquiring state lock. This is the beauty of using storage account. So this state lock feature, so what exactly this means, if I go back, so this lease, it will lease this particular container. So suppose I am a developer, I am running the Terraform configuration. So this particular container will be leased by me. Okay, it's available right now because it's already done in the backend, but when I'm running, it will be leased. So no one in my team can do changes to this configuration. So by this, we are making sure my state file is not getting corrupted. Okay, so this feature is available in storage account. You can do the same thing in AWS also, but in AWS, for getting this lease feature, you have to use DynamoDB. It is not available with S3. Remember that. Even that's a interview question. Okay, coming back. So resource group name, storage name, container key. Key is something what state file name you want to give. Terraform.tf state, and over here given as dev. So this is the file which will be created. Let me see if it is created. Okay, my resource is created. Let's go inside. Okay, here we go. Dev.terraform.tf state. If you go inside it, go in edit. Now if you see this is the resource group has been created. Let's see, verify if it is created or not. Yeah, here we go. This is the resource group which is created. Great. Let's go back to the PPT and let's see what else. Okay, this is the sample for you, but you can easily go and find this on Terraform documentation. Scenario 4, explain the various type of meta arguments in Terraform and their benefits. So firstly, understand what exactly is meta argument. Then what are the benefits? Why exactly are we using meta arguments? Okay, let's understand that. So meta arguments is nothing but it changes the default behavior of Terraform configuration. Okay, so it will, if you're applying meta argument, it will go ahead and change the default behavior of Terraform configuration. So what exactly do I mean by that? Let's understand that first. So there are 5 meta arguments, depends on, count, for each, provider, lifecycle. Okay, so depends on is nothing but, let's go and see it with an example. If we close this. Okay, meta arguments. Okay. Depends on. So depends on, by the name itself, you come to know that if you have this meta argument inside your resource block, so the meta argument comes inside a resource block or a module block, then it will change the behavior of that resource block. So what exactly I'm doing over here? Now I'm creating a resource over here, resource group. Then I'm creating a storage account over here. Okay. Now inside this storage account resource block, I have this depends on. So this storage account will not created before this resource group is created. So this storage account is directly dependent on this resource group. Frankly speaking, Terraform most of the times takes care of such systematic creation of resources. Terraform is very smart enough to create the resource group first, then to create the storage account. So this was not needed. This is just for example, I'm showing you that this is what depends on feature is all about. But if you want to see where exactly you can use it, so let's see this. I'm creating a virtual network. Where I'm creating a virtual network, I'm creating a subnet. Now I'm creating a public IP. So when I'm creating this public IP, I have a depends on meta argument. So this is dependent on my VNet and my subnet. So it will be only created, the public IP will be only created when the virtual network and the subnet is created. That makes sense. Okay. So again, it's an example of depends on. The second meta argument, it's count. Okay, so count, let's assume you want to create 10 virtual machine. So will you go and write those configuration for 10 virtual machine again? So it's very repetitive in nature, correct? You will not do it. So how do we tackle such things? So easily we can do it using count argument. So like suppose in this example, if you see, I'm creating a resource group, my RG. Okay, in this resource group, I've just given a meta argument 4 and I've given a name. How do I assign name? So I'm using indexing over here. Okay, and location East US. So when I run this is how the resource group will be created. That is what count, number of resources you want to create. The third is for each. For each is again a loop. If you want to loop, it has a key value pair. It's like looping. So now if you see this, I have a for each, I have a key value. This is a key, this is value, and I'm creating this again. I'm creating resource group, giving a name, each dot key. So this name will be printed over here for the very first, when the loop runs for the very first time. This is what will be printed, and this is what will be created. And in the location, this is what it will be printed. In the second time, this is when the iteration runs, this is what it will happen. This is how it will happen. So this is what is key value. This is what for each does, looping. If you have something, a requirement to loop around, so this is how you can go ahead and do it. That is what for each does for you. Okay. The fourth meta argument is provider. We already know, we have seen the provider so many times now. Provider is nothing but which cloud platform you want to use, where exactly you want to deploy your resources, where you want to create your resources. So which provider plugins you want to use. So as of now, I'm using Azure RM, and this sorry, not that. So this is the provider block, my mistake. So this is where you're telling the Terraform that I want to use Azure Cloud Provider plugins. So this is where the provider blocks comes in. You can have multiple features added inside this provider block. Okay. Okay guys, so let's see the last meta argument, that's lifecycle. For viewing lifecycle, let's go on Google and look for Terraform meta arguments. And inside this, go in resources, meta argument, then you get lifecycle over here. Okay. So lifecycle, there are multiple syntax and you can use. So one of the argument I'm using is lifecycle create before destroy. What exactly this is used for? Let's understand that. Okay. So by default, what is the default nature of Terraform? It must update in place if there are some changes what they're doing, update in place. But Terraform will insist destroy the existing object. Okay. So if it's not able to update in place, then it will go and destroy that object and then create a new replacement object for you. So sometimes it may work, sometimes it may not work for you. So that is the place where you will apply lifecycle. So lifecycle, if you're applying a create underscore before destroy lifecycle, this is one of the meta argument. It will make sure that that particular resources is created first, then only it is destroyed. So you'll say why it is needed. If it's destroying and recreating, what is the issue of creating it first and destroying? Just think from the production perspective. There is a resource which is on which your production is dependent, and if you're deleting it, then for that particular time, that moment of time, your production is down. So create it first, replace it, then delete the resource. That is what lifecycle does for you. It may work for you, it may not work for you, depending upon the scenario. There are other parameters also, prevent, destroy, and things like that. Okay, go ahead and look on this page and see what more information you can get. Okay, now let's move on to the next question. And for the life cycle, I have an example over here. I'm creating a resource group, but I'm making sure the resource group is created. I'm using this particular meta argument, create underscore before destroy equal to true. It's boolean. Okay, true or false, you can do it. So this is, my case is an existing resource. So what it will do, it will create a new one for me, then it will go and delete. Okay, that is the typical behavior. Again, you will not use this meta argument for such a small resource group creation. There would be a different scenario wherein you will be using this meta argument. This is just an example which I'm giving right now, how to use it. Coming back, next question. Who creates the Terraform TF state .backup file and under which scenario it is created? Very important question. So if you guys have noticed, when you are working with Terraform, there is a file which gets created, Terraform TF state backup. This file is automatically created by Terraform when you run the command terraform destroy. So that is the reason I have not ran the command terraform destroy prior, which is I will go ahead and do it now. So what exactly this file is for? Okay, so this will help you to restore the infrastructure to the same state prior running the terraform destroy command. The state what it was before running the destroy command, it will take you back to that particular state. So this is something, again, a file gets created automatically by Terraform itself when you run the command terraform destroy. Let's go and see that. Okay, so where I am, so this is something we have created resource over here. Now if I go and run the let's see the folder first. Okay, so this state file was created on my cloud, okay, inside this folder. So let's go back to the other command. Just give me one quick minute. Let's go back to the other folder wherein we have created a resource group using a module. Let's go back to that folder. Okay, let's go back to that folder. Let's see. So if you see this, I don't have a state file. Let's wait. If you see this, I have a state file over here. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's run the command terraform destroy. So it will go ahead and destroy my resource. So there are a couple of resources which I've created using this configuration. So both the resources will be destroyed, and let's see what happens once the resources are destroyed. Let's come back in a bit, because this destroy may take around 30 to 40 seconds. So let's come back post that. Okay guys, so the resources were deleted. If you see, it was destroyed completely. So if I go and check on my portal, I'll not find those resources now. But my point is, let's go and see. Okay, here we go guys. So we have a terraform.tf backup file created. What exactly is there in that file? Let's go and see. So this was created just now. Okay, so it's very similar to what we saw in the state file previously. So this is what it is there. So it's a backup, a state file backup file gets created automatically. And if I go and view in the state file, it will have nothing inside it now. No resources, because it's deleted. So now in case you have done it wrongly, and if you want to restore it back to the same state, delete the state file, rename it to terraform.tf state, and run the command apply. So your resources will be created again. Okay, now this state file, the tf state.backup file gets created in case of taint. So when we run the command terraform taint, even in that case, because you're changing the state file, so a backup file gets created. So whenever you do a changes in the state file, you will find this backup file getting created automatically. Okay, so I think that's it from today. So do let me know in the comment box, how did you like the session, and if you want some more topics to be covered, some more tools to be covered like Docker, Kubernetes, do let me know. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. Thank you. Have a great day. Goodbye. Hello all, and welcome to my channel DevOps Mela. This is Rohit Singh, and welcome to my interview questions series. Today we are covering Docker scenario based interview questions with practical solutions. So if you are new to my channel, please do check my interview question playlist. I have already covered Azure DevOps, Git, Terraform related questions over there. And if you are existing subscriber, please put down your comment what else you need and how did you like this particular video. Okay, so let's start and let me reiterate again. It will not be a straightforward interview question wherein I'm asking what is Docker, what is Docker engine and things like that. I'll be throwing up scenarios, think about the scenario, and then go look for the answer and the practical solution. Okay, keep that in mind and let's start. So the first question is difference between a Docker file and a Docker Compose file. Many of you will say this is a straightforward, easy question what you're asking, Rohit. No, I have been taking interviews and I'm seeing people are not clear what exactly is the difference between a Docker file and a Docker Compose file. So let's start with this easy question and let's understand what exactly is a Docker file and a Docker Compose file. So a Docker file is nothing but it's a simple text file that contains the command a user could call to assemble an image. So in simple word, it contains instructions, okay, an instruction to create an image out of it. That is what a Docker file is all about. On the other hand, a Docker Compose file is a tool. A Docker Compose is a tool that allows you to define and run multi-container Docker applications. So you need to create a Docker Compose file. It's a YAML file, and then in which you need to give all the instructions. You need to define the services in short. So let's see an example for that. So if you see at the left hand side, I have a Docker file example wherein I'm building a ASP.NET application. I have all the instructions like from work directory, environment. I'm exposing 5000 port and
when the container will run, I'm running the command .NET onto my project. So this is something I've already covered in my AKS video. So please do check my ASP.NET playlist. You'll find a Docker file practical over there. Okay. On the other side, I have a Docker Compose file written wherein I'm creating two application. I'm creating two containers. One is for Nginx, the other is for MySQL. Okay. So using this Docker Compose file, I'll be creating two containers. Two containers would be created. One will run Nginx, the other will run MySQL. Okay. And there are several environments which I'm setting for MySQL database. It's a simple Docker Compose file which you are seeing right now. And if you want to run this, if you want to run a Docker file, the command is docker build -t followed by the file name. On the other hand, if you want to run a Docker Compose file, the command is docker compose up in the current directory where you have your Docker Compose file. Or if you want to terminate everything at once, so the command is docker compose down. Okay, so that's it about the first scenario, difference between a Docker file and a Docker Compose file. Okay, let's go back and let's see the second scenario. Okay, so in the second scenario, the question is, after successfully executing the Docker command, so the command what we are running is docker run Ubuntu. The Ubuntu container is getting killed or it's getting terminated automatically. Please tell us the reason why. So think about this question. So the person is asking that you're running a command docker run Ubuntu, but somehow that Ubuntu container is getting terminated automatically. What could be the reason? Think about it. So the possible reason is this is the default behavior of a container. Okay, when a process running inside a container, when there is a process running inside a container exit, the container is killed or terminated automatically. So if there's nothing running inside, there's no process running inside the container, so there's no use of a container. The container will go in termination mode. Okay. So if you want your container to run, then make sure that the entry point of the command script runs in the foreground without exiting. Okay. So let's see an example. I will run. If you see, just focus on the left hand side of the screen terminal, wherein I'm running the command docker run Ubuntu. Okay. So once we run the command, it will try and create a Ubuntu container for me. Okay. If I go and check the status, I'm not seeing my container. But if I check the status with -a, I am seeing the container. That container was terminated 17 seconds ago. What could be the possible reason now? So let's see the reason on the right side of the terminal now. And this is something new I'm trying in my PPTs. Please do put down in the comment box whether you like this way or do you want me to do it manually. Okay, put down in the comment box. Okay, on the left hand side of the terminal, if you see, I'm going and inspecting the image. I'll check. I have an image called Ubuntu which we just downloaded. I'll go and inspect that image and see if there is any command and running or not by default, and if what exactly is the command and things like that. So I'll go and inspect that image. So if you see, I have a command running. There's no command, in fact. It's only a bash shell what I see right now. So what I do, I'll go and run the docker Ubuntu command again. But this time, I'll give her, in the runtime, I'll run a command called sleep 120. So during the runtime, I'm giving a command sleep 120. That means my container will not get terminated. It will wait for 120 seconds. That is around 2 minutes. So it will wait for 120 seconds. Post that, it will get automatically terminated. So if you have a process running till the life cycle of that process, your container would be alive. As soon as the process gets terminated, the reason could be anything, XYZ reason, then your container will also get terminated. Same over here, when I was running a docker run Ubuntu command, I was not running any process, I was not allocating any terminal, nor I was running any command or any entry point. So hence it was coming up and it was getting terminated within a second. So that was the question. what the interviewer has asked. Okay, think about it. It's a default behavior. Now let's go and look into the third scenario. Okay, this is very interesting. How do we run an Nginx web server on localhost 8088 using a bridge network? Let me reiterate. So the interviewer want you to run a Nginx web server, and that should be accessible on localhost 8088 using a bridge network. Great. Let's see how exactly we can do it. So this can be achieved by running the below command. Docker run IT is interactive terminal. D stands for detach. P stands for publish port. So we are publishing the 8088 port on the local host. Nginx by default runs on port 80. I'm giving a name to my Nginx web server. It's web_server. And at the end, I have my Nginx image. Okay. And this is a trick question, guys. So the trick question is over here. Bridge network is the default network in Docker. So that was the trick. Just added using a bridge network, just to confuse you guys whether you're aware about bridge network or not. So there are three type of networking you can do in Docker: bridge network, host, and none. So by default, when I run the command docker run IT with the name web server Nginx, by default bridge network will get selected. So let's see in practical how exactly it happens. So I'm running the command docker run IT -d -p. I'm defining the ports 8088 :80, giving the web server name as web_server and giving my image name as Nginx. I'm not defining the network anywhere. My expectation is automatically a bridge network should be created. Now if you see on my local host, my application is up and running. Now let's go and inspect my container and let's see the networking part. So docker inspect is to inspect your container if you want to check information regarding your container. So that is the command docker inspect. So I'm just grabbing and I'm checking if bridge. So if you see bridge network was by default created when you created this container. So it was a trick question just to confuse you guys using a bridge network. So this is straightforward. Bridge networks gets created automatically when you create a container. Okay, that was the third question, third scenario based question. Let's go back to the fourth one. Now the fourth is explain how to make container volume persistent. So this is straightforward, correct? You will use -v and you'll give the source and the destination. So that's straightforward, correct? But this is not the end. That's the first question. Explain how to make container volume persistent. And the second is how do we mount the volume on the local host directory root/nginx. So over here it's not talking about to make your container volume persistent on the default directory. The default directory is where live volumes. It is asking you to mount it on a different directory on your local host. Okay, so think about it, how exactly we can do it, and let's see. Okay, so this can be achieved through a bind mount option. So we have a bind mount option and we can resolve the above query. So what exactly is a bind mount? It can mount a file or a directory onto your container from your local host machine. Okay, so that is the question, correct? How can we mount root/nginx onto the container and make my container volume persistent? Okay, that is the question. Let's see in practical how exactly it is done. So I'm in the root nginx directory right now. So this is the command. So we ran the previous command only, docker run nginx web server. The only difference is I'm using mount and the type is bind and I'm defining the source and the destination. Now if I see, I have a running container. Now I'll go and inspect my container and I'll see the mount, if the mount was done right or not. So I'm in my mount section. If you see, the type is bind, the source is root nginx, the destination is user share nginx. That is the default directory for nginx server on the container. Okay, so this is how we can achieve binding a local drive onto a container. Okay, so this way we can make a container volume persistent. Now this is very interesting. Understand this question first. A company has restrictions. So I'm a developer. I'm giving you an option that my company has restriction on pushing from Docker Hub. So I cannot pull, neither I can push any images from Docker Hub. Now, I have a restriction. I cannot put anything, my own image, I cannot put it on cloud or any other cloud provider, private or public registry. This is very rare, but still this is a scenario wherein I cannot put my local image, the image which I have created for my application, on a Docker Hub, or I cannot even put it on some private registry on cloud like ACR and things like that. So how do I set up my own local Docker registry? So we are talking about setting up our own local Docker registry. If possible, then how? So what exactly the question is? The question is to set up your own Docker Hub locally, but okay, so that internally on your local host, you can, the image which you have created, you can push that image to that local registry, and whenever is needed, you can pull that image out of it. How exactly this can be done? So let's see. Is it possible? Definitely yes. How? Let's see it. The above scenario can be achieved by running your own registry container. Okay, Docker has an image registry wherein you, by running that, you can create your own local registry. How exactly it is done? This is the set of command which you need to run. The first command, the default port for creating a registry is 5000. So the command which you need to run is docker run the port 5000 registry, and the image name is registry ;2. That is the registry. Once you run it, you can tag your image with the command docker image tag followed by the localhost ;5000 / image name. Then you can push your image, docker push localhost followed by your image name. So I have not done this practically because this is out of scope for this interview question and scenario based questions. Plus do let me know in the comment box if you need a solution video for this scenario, especially this scenario. I can quickly create it for you guys. Okay, that's it for today. Please do like, share and subscribe, and please put down your feedback in the comment box and what else you need, what other tools you want, everything, whatever you want, please put down in the comment box, or else you can just write to me at devopsmail@gmail.com, or you can visit my website devopsmail.in. That's it. Thank you. Have a great day. Goodbye.